As of last class, you guys gave me like around 3 companies. I think it was Airtel, Nairobi Water, GoTV, DSTV. Yeah, four companies that I was to check out on Twitter, and then we were to task Eriko to scrub for us that conversation, and then we start building our. We get our data set within which we can use to predict some of the support on these companies, the support requests on these companies by looking at their current support requests. So Enrico, I think, oh, Deno said, oh my goodness, Deno, how much was that data? I must have been on. Deno says he sent me on Twitter. That is good. Deno, do you want to tell us how many records were there? Deno, I completely forgot this one. I'll need to check that out. So we have that data. I don't know why. Deno maybe might be having problems. Because I can't hear him. He just sent me a text. He had sent the data. All right, I'll have a look at that. So for today and next week, I'll be busy preparing that data to reflect a time series issue and try and figure out what are some of the reasons people contact Airtel through Twitter. And then that would give us a basis to do some forecasting. What is most likely to be spoken about in a week or 2 weeks, or even in the next 3 months? What will Airtel customers be talking about? So that is the plan. But for today, we'll just revisit the notebook, and then I show you how we could build a dashboard and actually host it using a certain library. A library called Bokeh. This is a very, very basic notebook. So that the objective of this class would be to create a dashboard. Those people who've used rather any dashboard. We have several dashboard tools. We have Power BI. We have BI itself. Any other? Any dashboard tool someone has heard about or has interacted with? Hakuna? So by the end of this class, the time is not being pushed forward. The demo day is still there, so it's us guys to squeeze.
Ayub?
Yes?
I will ask that question again. If somebody has used or
has used or have heard or have read about any dashboard any dashboard tools used by analytics teams or even data scientists.
I've used Power BI, I've used Tableau,
Yeah.
I think those are the major ones that I've used.
Good stuff. Sasa hiyo akili yako you will be a resource over here. You're going to be a resource over here. So what we'll be doing at the end of after going through the notebook, what I will do is I'll show you guys how to use a certain library or a set of libraries to create a dashboard using one of the libraries. And the dashboard will be just as interactive as Power BI or Tableau. Yeah, so this is just, it's going to be very, very a basic interface, but an idea of what we might want to have on that dashboard. So people's creativity would be important. So today, after the notebook, we'll just think through in this kind of problem that we are trying to learn as we solve, what are some of the visualization we'd want to see? Yeah. And I hope and pray that we've not forgotten about our problem statement. For the sake of guys who are joining for the class for today and those who have forgotten, like Eriko, I'm going to request I'm going to request Faith to just put us up to speed with what the project, what we are trying to achieve. Faith, utukumbushe tumeenda holiday tukasahau kila kitu. Faith, kama nimekuseti, unajua mimi napenda kuseti watu.
Acha nikwambia Ayub, mimi nilikuwa absent minded. Atiuliza ati.
Aya, inakaa uko kwa meeting fulani ama. Aya, swali ni hii, for the guys who are not in class, or rather, for the guys who've forgotten about our problem statement, what we are trying to achieve, like myself and Eric Nzivo, yeah?
Oh, yes, speak for yourself.
Yes, really.
Yeah, can you remind us what we are working to resolve? The problem we are trying to as we learn, what problem are we trying to solve? That was the question.
Oh, the type of problem we are trying to solve.
Yes.
We're trying to solve a problem. Now, do I give the example or I just?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're trying to forecast the types of complaints that a company would get, and also whether a certain customer would complain at a certain time, and now how to use that data to maybe come up with targeted marketing or targeted messages or targeted solutions. Yeah.
Nice. Eriko, uko na kitu ya kuongeza? Najua wewe pia ulikuwa umesahau, unajifanya tu. Uko na kitu ya kuongeza? Yeah. Eriko is probably eating something. Okay, let me jump right straight to the notebook. So Edgar, I know you were not around. That was just for to bring you up to speed. Do you have any questions before I go to the notebook?
Not really.
Not really. All right.
Yeah,
so I'll
okay.
assume you're good.
Yeah, I'm good.
Perfect. So what I'll do, let me just close this. I was playing around with some libraries I interacted with. Let me project. So I did not get enough time to come up with something good, but the next class you guys will see. We'll all participate. Let me share my screen. All right. All right, can you guys see my screen? Ella?
Yes.
Sorry, guys. Okay, so if you can see, this is the notebook we had previously. I'll just go through it from the beginning. And since we are not seeing this at the very first time, so there are guys who said they went through the notebook. Two things would be possible: either they have questions or they're comfortable. So at some point, I'll be just asking random questions. So if you went through it, you could help answer. If a question comes through, please feel free to just answer and contribute. All right. So the first cell, as usual, is just to import the libraries. And for the sake of, again, Edgar, this is a time series problem. And time series is you're observing either a single variable over a certain period of time. So it means your dependent variable is, it's always time, and your target variable, whatever you're observing over a period of time, could be one or several. So in this case, we are looking at identifying some of the reasons why a customer would reach out to Airtel, and what would they be talking about? And can we be able to predict, like in the next 1 week, the next 2 weeks, the next 3 weeks, are we able to predict what they are talking about, what customers are likely to contact them about, all right? So we thought about this. It was actually Faith's idea, and everyone else backed her up, and we started that journey. Dennis just told me that he sent me 22,000 rows of conversations he scrapped from Twitter, which is good. I think he actually did it Nimini Mesahau. I think during that time I was so swamped, just saying yes to almost everything, but not knowing that I'm putting myself into problems. Anyway, so the first cell is where you import the libraries. The notebook the notebook is in my GitHub, so you can actually follow through from GitHub. A definition of time series, what I've said, and the types of time series. So when you're observing a single variable over a certain period of time, then that is a univariate. But when you're doing several variables over a certain period of time, that is multivariate. Yeah. Now there is one very, very important thing about time series. You need to be very good with date manipulation. Soles had mentioned that she was busy learning Python. I really hope that date manipulation using pandas or Python date time was part of it, because that skill would be really, really necessary during this class. How you manipulate dates, depending on what you want to view, or how you manipulate the data using pandas. So those are the most important skills within time series. Okay, now for date, there is the library datetime, yeah, and there are quite a lot of ways within which you can manipulate the date column. There's instances where the Excel sheet that you're working with, or the data that you're working with from the database, is not in the right format. So you might, or the date is stored in string. So you might want to convert that to date first before you start doing your manipulation. So if it is in string, an example would be like what I'm just projecting. If you have Excel sheet in this column, that the column is stored in that format, using the date utility path, you can actually convert it to a date time. It's split. From date time, you can now get it into the format that you want, that you so wish. Once it's in date time, then you can use NumPy to convert it to several formats. One of the formats is as what you've seen below, where you start with year, month, and then day. Yeah, it's by default. That code there shows you how you can pass a string and define the date type and create a NumPy array, and it will return the same value as a date time in a datetime array. Okay. Another thing with NumPy is you can specify, given these dates, you can add several days by not providing the dates itself, but just doing addition by giving it a quantity. So that is one good tool about NumPy, datetime 64. from within the default date time in Python, you're not able to. But with NumPy's date array, you can actually do that. So this is a NumPy date, and you can actually add. So that is another advantage. So when you add dates, it takes the start and it adds the number of days that you want. Yeah. Now, when you're working with pandas and with time series, pandas and date manipulation is key, like I said earlier. So this is an example of a data frame. This is an example of a data frame that has date time with some series, like now 0, 1, 2, 3, for just illustration purposes. So with pandas, when you have it as a date time index, yeah, remember this is a date time index. You're making that column to be of type date time. So with pandas, you can store date. The fact that you can actually see that it's date does not mean that its data type is date. Yeah, does not mean that its data type is date. So you have to convert it to date time index, and to be able to do manipulation, like now, let me say filter between date ranges. Guys, I'm going to ask to be given 5 minutes. Let me pick another urgent call. I'll be right back. Sorry for that. Sorry, guys. Some calls you cannot avoid. So I was saying, once you have a date index column, pandas, you can actually see that this is date, but if you don't check the data type, you could be struggling with the time series issue, and yet your column is stored as, your data is stored as string. So you need to make sure that that column that has the date values is actually in date time. So this one will give you, within pandas, it will give you the flexibility to do some really good shortcuts. Like if you wanted to view data for a specific period, you could just define the start and the end, and it will show you. And this is the same data that you can actually store in a separate data frame. So if, for instance, you want to analyze and compare two different periods, like now Q1 of a certain year and Q1 of a different year. So you want to like just check out the data or even do visualization for those different quarters, separate side by side, and check is there anything common, or is there anything good you can get out of it. Yeah, so that data we are going to pull from Twitter needs to Enrico, it needs to pull as far back as you can. So we are counting on you to make our life very, very difficult by giving us a lot of data. All right. So we could look at the historical interactions for, say, Airtel or any one of those companies. We look at their messages on Twitter for the past, say, 1 year or 2 years or even 3 years, and be able to project in the next coming couple of days or couple of weeks, this is what we expect. And since it's public information, we could actually validate. Is this true? So we go to Twitter and find out which queries. We now do the second polling of the data and check which queries came, and did our model predict, for instance, if internet queries are 5, our model predicts that we will have 5 internet queries or complaints. When we go to Twitter, will we find that it is 5? Will we find that it is 10? Will we find that it is 4? So this is something that we can validate because this data is public. That is one way of doing it. Another way of doing it is from the data that we have extracted, we could exclude 1 month or even 90 days from that data and use the others to predict the 90 days. So we come and validate how the numbers were for the next 90 days. So this data manipulation once you have your column as date index, that is one of the advantages. So within pandas, you have also a ways of converting a certain column to date index. That's it. This is creating a default a data frame using date index. This is converting, it could be converting a column, in this case, converting a string or a string column into a date, to date time is to timestamp. So this one, it gives you both date and time. Yeah. This is another way of when you want to specify, there are so many, I think I pasted here the various options here. Oh, this is for frequency. We'll come to that. But there are some, when you go to Pandas, I think Pandas, the online library for Pandas, you'll see the various formats for dates. This is another one, to dates time. This is converting it to timestamp. So you can provide either this, you see there's a difference. You provide the year, it gives you by default 0000, or you could provide the date together with the time. This one is just the date without the time. But if you convert it to date time, it will give you both date and time. And then the same to this, by providing day fast. There was a shortcut that I had told you guys, if you wanted to see what are the variables or what are the parameters you can pass to a function, you press Shift Tab. Excuse me. Now, you can convert actually a list. Yeah, so this list, you give it different formats, and when you convert it to date time, it will actually convert them. So these are some of the things that you can do depending on the data that has been given to you. So you could be given data that is so messed up. There are some records that are in this format, there's some records that are in this format, another one is in this format. So you might be wondering, how do I move forward? Pandas has a very good way of handling that. And then you can actually specify the format that you want. If you don't like it from year, month, and then day, then you could specify a format. And yes, please go ahead. Faith, you have a comment?
Yeah, I've just remembered. In the last class, there's somebody who was asking, how do you know that pandas, for example, if you have a date like 1995, this one, yeah, it was this on October 10th, 1995. So down here, how do you know which is the month and which is the date?
Oh, okay. So yeah.
That was me.
Yes, that was Enrico. Yes, Faith?
Oh, sorry, Enrico.
Yes, go ahead. You discovered?
So I discovered pandas automatically takes the year, month, and then date.
By default. Yeah.
By default, yeah.
Yes. And then if you want to change it, then you change it to this.
Yeah.
You specify your parameter. Good stuff. Okay. So for as long as you have date time in your not strings, then you will be very, very safe. Yeah. The next one is if you want to you have dates. You can use the to period to specify like the frequency within which you want to if it is for D, that is daily. Let me try and see this. I want to just see what other parameters are here. Okay. Now this one I'm using JupyterLab. I'm not so conversant with shortcuts for JupyterLab, but for Jupyter it's Shift Tab, and it will populate the. Anyone who's worked with JupyterLab? And the shortcut for viewing the help function. Okay, I'll know by the next class how I'll have figured out. I just installed JupyterLab today. Don't ask me where I've been. Don't worry. We learn every day. Okay. So there are times when you want to view dates in frequencies. Like now, you have a certain date range. Yeah. You have a certain date range, and you want to view it on a daily frequency, or it could be quarterly or monthly or yearly. So there's a way where you use dates and the function to period to help you get that output as a list. Now the same thing can be done as time delta. So time delta is it's basically time like duration. It could be for instance, if you take dates minus dates index 0. So the first one, this is 25th February 2010. So 25th February 2010, you deduct from 25th February 2010, it is 0 days. And then this one, you subtract it from this one, it gives you 2,719 days. This one, you subtract it from this one, you get 1024 days. So this manipulation, for as long as you have your data in date format, you can do so many things. And you see, time series is just studying a certain observed variable over a certain period. So there are so many things that you'd ask yourself. How was it like? Is it the same for the past 50 days? Is it the same? Is it the same last year, like a similar time? What does the data say, like 200 days ago? So all these things you can actually calculate. It's very, very easy. Something that with normal programming you'd write like maybe 12 lines of code, or even using programming languages, you could even go beyond 12. Other things that you can use for within pandas, date range, period range, time delta range. But now in this case, there is time delta, there is period, and there is date. But this time it's range. So you're looking at start and end. And not all of them has start and end. You can provide start date and end date, but also you can provide the start date with the number of days, or the start date with the period. Okay, it could be periods could be either days or hours that you want. In this case, the frequency is hour, 8 hours. So you just specify the date, and the period is 8. So you want to see the frequency is hours. So you'll see this is midnight, and then 1, and then 2, and then 3, and then 4, 5, 6, and 7. So because index starts at 0, but there are 8 values. So it simplifies a lot of things, especially now when you'll be, for example, if you're given data for a day, you've been given data for a day, and then you're asked, no, you've been given daily data for a period of a whole month. And then you're asked, what will your model predict on a certain day at a certain time? So you see your problem immediately shifts from a daily prediction to an hourly prediction. Because if you don't convert it to an hourly prediction, you won't be able to answer that question. So but the data that you've been given the daily data. So you might want to do something to your data set to make sure you have visibility for hourly. But now when you do that, it generates something else, yeah? So if that hourly records, for that, there will be some hours that don't have records. There will be some hours that have records if it's there. But again, there's a technique of making sure that you either create data for continuity purposes and ability to predict. There is a way, we will discuss about that later in this notebook, okay? So this is still data manipulation, and it's really expansive. I just picked some of the most important things to note when you're dealing with a time series problem. So the period also, you can specify a year and month, period 8. So it gives you for the next 8 months, or for at least given the start date, the start month, it can give you the next 6 months. So when you guys are thinking about, or for as long as you're understanding this, the objective is we will need to think about the kind of dashboard we would want to create. What are some of the things that would excite someone to make a specific decision? So we would want to see maybe the past 3 months, or the same period. I want you guys to now jog your minds and let us be creative in the kind of dashboard that we want. Faith has used Power BI, so maybe she could tell us how it is. And but that does not mean you wouldn't be in a position to actually contribute. In fact, I think you guys, someone who's not used Power BI but is interested in knowing something about the problem we are solving, is most likely to give us a very unique dashboard requirement. So you guys would definitely need to, at the end of today's session, contribute in the sense that if I was the, say, customer care manager, I would want to see this and this and this. And then we ask ourselves, are we able to generate that kind of dashboard? And then we come to our data, and then when we are now doing all this stuff, we know that we can actually display that data, and this is how we're going about it. So it's something that we've built using the input of everyone in the class. All right. So there's something called frequencies and offsets. I gave some tips earlier. So frequency, you know, certain statistics, especially business statistics, it's good to look at them on specific frequency because of the unique pattern certain things take. Certain things happen. For instance, you could have that January to March, there is a unique pattern that you see, which is different from April to June, which is different from, say, August to October, and then November, and then it's also different from December to March the following year. So you might want to split your data into frequencies, and some of the frequency would be, say, like quarterly, monthly, daily. You get? So what you're looking at right now are the available frequencies that can be supported by time series pandas data. So you could generate all these and align and create dashboards that are in sync with all this frequency. Like now, this one, what I've just highlighted here, business quarter, yeah, and then business year start. So we will explore the possibility of all this while we are doing the time series. Okay. That is another way of doing time delta range, and it gives you, this is just the previous one that we looked at was date time, and this one is time delta. So it gives you just the time only. So it has even specific. So if you want what's going to happen in the next like 30 minutes, this is, for instance, you're looking at plane arrivals. What is the most likely predicted time that the plane is going to arrive? Okay, now plane arrival is more like obvious because they're normally, those are one of the transport means that is a bit specific. Hakuna jam huko juu unless sasa kuna kitu. Lakini kama ni bus station, hata train is a bit specific, but more often than not kunaweza kuwa na some seconds delay or even a couple of minutes delay because either walichelewa kwa one of the stations, yeah, railway. So for whatever reason, you are asked to to make predictions within minutes or within seconds, then I could think those are some of the areas within which you can do such predictions. For instance, by how many minutes or by how many seconds a train is likely to delay on a certain day. So for as long as you've been given the data, yeah, and you split your historical data to give you this information, then by all means you can be able to answer that question. That is a time series problem, right? So that is so much about it. This notebook has a lot, and I think I also shared the links for additional stuff on date time. The next section is going to be exploration now. The exploration here is very, very basic, which makes me mention that in the next class, there is what I'm going to show you today is a library I found very, very nifty, very good for time series, and I was actually told about it by a colleague of mine in the office. So we will explore this library in terms of learning and visualizing and creating the dashboard. So the dashboard and exploration in this notebook is very, very basic, matplotlib, but towards the end, I'll show you another notebook of the kind of stuff that we will be able to do by September. So September is next month. Atubanduki, time ilipotea, but we are able to do it. I'll see how we can move a bit faster. All right. Okay. So the most obvious thing after importing the data set, you check if there are any null values. There isn't any. This is a short piece of code that tells you if there is any null values within your data frame. Yeah, and then you check the shape, basically how many rows. This data set has around 913K rows. Yeah, and then for number of hours you calculate. This is just to help you know if there is any gap in your data set. So to this one, if you want to know if there is any gap to your data set, just use it by the hours, calculate the start, the first date in your data set and the last date in your data set, get the number of hours, and then we all know that you can actually calculate the number of hours between 2 days. So we know if a 24-hour day is this and this. So you compare those 2 dates. If they are so different, then it means there's a gap. But if you look at this is 43,800, this is 43,801. This is very close, so it's acceptable. It's highly unlikely that there is a gap. But if there was a gap, this would give you maybe 30,000, and this one will give you 43,800. So the ideal one should be 43,800. If you get this difference, then it means you need to go back to your data set and find out, is this gap because you are not given that data, or is it a gap because it's actually not supposed to be there? So both cases could mean you take different approaches. If the data was actually not supposed to be there, you might want to now split it into two, or the first window and the second window, and then use the first window to predict the gap, and then use the entire set to predict continuity. That is one option, yeah. But you must have some disclaimers. All right. So sample data was, let me say, a certain product.
Hey.
We will, yes?
Would you repeat on that that point?
Yep.
Yes, the difference, what you are saying.
Okay. The last point, huh? Okay. So I was saying, you might find there are two possible cases. If you find that there is a gap, then you need to figure out, one, was this gap because you were not given the data set, or was this gap because actually that data is not there and it shouldn't be there, or rather it's not there. For instance, maybe it was you are doing a delay of a specific plane, and there's a period that that plane was under maintenance, a period of say 3 months. Yeah. So if that data actually was not there and you're asked to predict delay of that particular plane, how likely is it going to delay for the next say 3 months? So there are two ways of solving this data. If the data you're given was for 2 years or maybe 3 years, and you figure out that in these 3 years, 3 months, the plane was under maintenance, it never took off, yeah, so the data is not there. No takeoff, no receive, nothing. The data is not there. You could use, if that gap was immediately at the center of the 3-year period, meaning it's 1.5, 1.5, yeah. So you could decide one way of handling this is, let me use the first period up to just before the plane was taken for maintenance. I use that period to make a prediction for the next 3 months. So this is a prediction. If this plane never went for maintenance, this would have been the delay. And then you will have your complete set for 3 years, and then now you use 3 years to complete your prediction. Yes? So that is one way. But the second way was,
Ayub,
yes?
just before you go far.
Yes?
So with the statement, does it work like a conditional probability?
No, not really. No, this is just a business decision, or rather, not even a business decision. It's a technique you decide as an ML engineer that let me try and approach this, because you know with machine learning, it's always just trials to see to study something. So it's not like it's not like that case conditional probability.
Okay.
This is just a technique you're employing to fill the gap. So you have another option of either going back to those guys and telling them, I noticed there was a gap here. Is it, yeah?
Because I'm trying to think of it like you have an irregular sequence, yeah? Like you're working on a regular sequence, like say up to 3 years. Then on the 4th year, you encounter an irregular sequence. Now you're trying to employ conditional probability to get back to their sequence.
Okay. To be honest, I haven't tried, or even I've never considered that. But the explanation, maybe that could work. I'm not so sure. I've not tried that.
Okay.
But it could be an option, because at this particular time you're just exploring, how do I feel? First of all, should I just model with that? And then is it like constant? For instance, do you take planes regularly? Like, let me say after every 1.5 years, the plane is under maintenance, or was that a one-off that in the next say 6 years it's not going to go for maintenance? Is it just a one-off? So these are some of the things that you need to find answers, and the answers you get will determine the decision you take on how to build the model.
Okay.
Yeah, so it will be interesting to see how that is handled as a conditional probability. I'm not so sure, but it could be handled as under, in time series there's a way of detecting seasonality and trend. So when you look at the trend, and if it's something that happens within a year, you've noticed that within a period of 24 months, it happens twice. Like now, at least it happens twice. You see now, it creates a season. So that one, it won't be a problem. You can actually just proceed with your modeling. But if it is one-off and it doesn't show seasonality, then how do you handle it? So those are some of the questions you'll need to answer.
And on the point of seasonality, is there a way of knowing, or are we just using the same technique here for the difference in hours or so?
There's a way of knowing. You plot based on your data. We'll actually see. You plot the observations that you're making, and you will see that the pattern changes, and you'll see like a bunch of changes repeats itself. You get a bunch of changes repeat itself. I'll explain when we get to that point. Right? So there's actually a way of knowing. Okay. So when you get to this point, when you get the data from Twitter, we will come up with specific products that we want to track. Maybe 1, 2, 3, or even 4 or 5, yeah, that you want to track. So based on the product that you pick, you might want to count how many of those products appeared on this date. So Enrico, the objective is, if we have quite a lot of text, there is something that I will go out and do, but I'll also request any volunteers. We could do it together. Already Deno has shared 22,000 records from Twitter. So this exercise would be to look through that text and try and figure out how many products are from that text. We could use NLP. Those guys who attended the NLP class, there are some NLP techniques. One of them is called topic modeling, where we could identify from each of those texts what are their most common, what is the most common conversation about those texts, and then we make those topics to be our products. And then we count on a specific day how many products appeared. So by the time we are finishing that exercise, we will have learned some kidogo NLP, even if we didn't attend the NLP classes. All right, so eventually we will have a data frame like this one, where of course we will have one channel. So this we might use, we might not use it. It's useless because you're looking at it one channel. But in that channel, we'll look at several products. And we will have to generate how many of those products were mentioned on that particular day. So once we achieve this, we will have done a lot of work, yeah, and we will have learned a lot. And most likely we will have built a classifier, most likely. So all the other things that is not related to time series, we will do them during the week. So I'll get myself busy trying to do that work, and I invite anyone to join me. I'll be reaching out. I'll be posting the time and the window that I'll be doing some specific tasks. For instance, that topic modeling, and then documenting it, so that for anyone who wants to learn, I will be pushing it so that you learn. But the class like this one will just be focused on time series. Any other thing that we need to achieve that is not time series will still happen, but outside this class. But the information and the notebook will be available for you guys to just during your own time to go through them and learn. All right. So like I said, we have univariate time series and multivariate time series. So if you wanted to observe the quantity of say complaints that come through within Twitter only, then you'll have the channel being Twitter, and you'll have the date, and then the quantity there would mean on that day we had 1 complaint, on the other day we have 1. So that is what you'll be observing over a certain period of time. That is univariate time series. It's as simple as that. Multivariate is just when whatever you're observing are several over a certain period of time. So you're observing in parallel. Like now, you're doing the same observation for multiple variables over more or less the same period of time. So the period should be the same, the variables should be different, and what you're observing should be the same. So what you're observing, if it is count of whatever you're observing, then it is multivariate. Okay. All right. So these are the basic ugly visualization I came up with. Very, very basic. Yeah. But this one is just for your notebook. This one you will never display it anywhere. So for instance, this one, you look at it like and think that, oops, this is the reason why I did this. I wanted to explain some concept for time series. Very, very important concepts. And when you plot your graph, you realize the shape up there. The shape was 930,000 records. So when you plot a graph like this one, you'll be wondering, hey, I was expecting a trend graph. Is something wrong with my graph? It looks like a line. But the reason being that data is too much. So when it's too much, it is of high frequency. Yeah? So maybe the data was on a daily basis. So you can imagine daily basis for the past, say, 5 years. That is a lot of data. But if you have options of either reducing the data by sampling, like randomly pick, I only want to observe 1,000 samples. So just using the panda sample formula, retrieve only 1,000. So that for 1,000 records, you can actually see the trend. That is one way. But with 1,000 records, you really cannot use, your model won't learn a lot. And that is a wrong approach, basically. It's a wrong approach. You need to look at the entire data set and the model to learn from the entire data set, okay? But there is a way within which there are some techniques other than you personally retrieving a sample set of records that you can, this is what I meant. This is how you can pull a sample of 100, and when you trend, you actually see. So this you're looking at a sample of 100 records, observation. Yeah. Now, if you do multivariate, like in this case, you're observing the quantity across the channel for product and demand. That is multivariate. It gives you a different trend or different plots. Yeah, different plots. Yeah. So the same thing, if you were to pick sample, this is how it will look like. So it is actually visible. Yeah. But like I said, this is a wrong approach. I wanted to explain a certain concept that is very, very important, and it's related to the time change, okay? And that concept is resampling, yeah? So resampling is just a way of how do I put this? You see, when you do sampling using pandas for time series problem, it's a wrong approach. Resampling would mean you sort of like aggregate the data for specific time periods. So for instance, you're still observing the quantities, but there is need for you to look at it on either a monthly basis or hourly basis. So you're not working with sample records. You're working with the entire records, but you've aggregated the totals. So if your data was on a daily basis, meaning you're seeing the data on a daily basis, then your sample records, for instance, today is 5, tomorrow is 6, the other day is 10. That means you'll have 11 by the end of the week. Yeah. So instead of you viewing on a daily basis, why can't I view weekly? So when I view weekly, you're essentially reducing the frequency. Yeah, when you do monthly, you're actually reducing the frequency because daily is of high frequency. Hourly is even a higher frequency. So the resampling techniques is making the same observation using the entire data, but now the data is aggregated. Okay, hope that makes sense. So basically, ikizungumingi is what I've just tried to talk, and at times I really talk a lot. But in case I'm confusing you, please feel free to just stop me and ask a question. Now, the next part I want to say is
Quick question.
yes, Enrico.
When no, let me get this correct about resampling. Is it just total or average or mode or median? Like, do you have that option of choosing what you want to do?
Yes, yes, yes. There is an option.
And even the timing, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay. So when you are upsampling, just like I'd given a hint previously, when you're upsampling, it means you're increasing the frequency. So what you're doing is you're adding, say, if you're given quarterly data and your problem is a monthly problem, it means you need to increase the frequency for you to observe that set of data set in monthly time intervals. Yeah. So you're basically increasing the frequency. Yeah. When you're downsampling, you're doing the exact opposite. So you have hourly records, but because it is too much, you want to visualize the same pattern. You need to visualize it. Maybe instead of hourly, why can't we work with daily? Why can't we work with weekly or monthly? So you're downsampling. You're decreasing the frequency of observations. Yeah. And oops, sorry. There are cases in which each one of those apply, and it will be driven, knowing that these techniques are available, then you as an ML engineer would automatically know when to apply when to downsample or when to upsample. Yeah. So that is what I've explained up here. But when you're upsampling, like now that is what Enrico had mentioned earlier, actually alluded to. But there's something I want to mention when you're upsampling. So, and I actually mentioned it at the beginning of this class. When you're upsampling, what you're doing is you have records that are, you have an Excel sheet that has monthly data. So you have month on month or daily data, and your problem is hourly. Yeah. So you need to increase the frequency of your data set. So when you do that, there is a possibility, or rather not possibility. Obviously, there are some records that will be null because you're creating like new observations. So this was month, and then when you split this month and view it into daily, you're creating new observations that the observation will be null. It won't have a value. Yeah. So there are techniques within which you can actually fill. You can fill or generate those values. Yeah. There are instances when those values could automatically be zero, but there are instances when the value that was there before somehow relates or can be used to generate the value that is the next value. So it's like you're doing something called interpolation. So you're using the previous value to generate the most probable value using a specific set technique. And some of those techniques are, for instance, last observation carried forward. So basically this one, if you're going to check, you want to know which one is the most probable value for the next gap that you created. So you just pick the last observation and put it there. and then next observation carried backward. So you have a next observation and the gap is behind. So you pick it and place it there. So that is in English terms, but there are other techniques that we will explore during the course of this class and see how we implement them. Yeah, that is for upsampling. For downsampling, it's you're decreasing the frequency, meaning you're moving from an hourly, which is of high frequency, to say weekly or monthly, which is of low frequency. So that is downsampling. So downsampling, you rarely have nulls. Actually, you don't have nulls when you downsample. Okay. All right. Let me see. When you downsample, yeah, I haven't come across a situation where you have nulls when you're downsampling because you're aggregating that data over a certain period of time. Okay, but when you do certain things that we're going to talk about, when you're doing certain things like shifting the data is either moving, it's just like when you take, let me give an example. What do we mix? What do we normally mix? We put them together and then we mix. Rico, give me an example. I want to use an example. Anything that you've ever mixed in your life?
Alcohol.
What's an alcohol? Besides alcohol.
Sorry, what do you want? Do you want it on this data form or something?
Even outside, it could be grains. Any situation that you, yeah.
Well, Githeri, yeah.
I knew. I knew someone was going to mention Githeri. Faith unasema nini? Oh, maziwa na maji. Okay, sawa. Let's take with Githeri. Githeri unaona mahindi na maragwe. Na wale wenye napika Githeri na carrots, kuna carrots. Si ndio? So you'll put them together, maybe carrots utaweka baadaye, lakini sasa mahindi na maragwe unaziweka, unachanganyika, maybe ufunike sufuria ufanye hivi. Yeah? It mix vizuri. So when you mix,
tunaona kichwa yako tu.
Ati nini?
When you say unaeka Githeri alafu unafanya hivi, we only see your head. We are not seeing anything else.
It's my head that is shaking.
We only see your head shaking and we think probably the laptop is having problems.
Hivi unaona mkono?
At least.
Yeah. So the idea is, Devi amesema Githeri na avocado. So Githeri na avocado na mix na kijiko. But let's assume you put them in a bowl and then you're shaking them. So the idea is to mix it so that that avocado is well spread on the Githeri, yeah, for you to start enjoying your meal. But now when you're talking about shifting in time series, you want to look at the patterns by the same pattern by moving either the data backwards or forward, or moving the x-axis, the time. You're moving the x-axis backward or forward. So what I mean by this, think of a line graph where kuna January, February, March, April, May, and up to December. Yeah, and then the line graph, you can plot it. You plot it. I think from Zoom. Okay, that will take some time. So I'll just try and my best to describe. So you have your x-axis with the trend. Yeah. So the first thing you would do is, let's assume the beginning of this line graph is actually not January, but March. Let's assume. But we are moving it with that data. So ile data ya January, wacha tuisongeshe ianze March. Hiyo nini hapo chini, the x-axis is still stagnant. So you shift the data from January to March and then see how the pattern pans out. That is one option. But you could leave the data to start with from the beginning, but shift the date. so that date, instead of January being at the end, you shift it by 3 months. So at the beginning itakuwa December, October, November, December of the previous year. So basically you have two options: shifting the x-axis, which is the date, or shifting the data itself. There are specific terms for that. What I wanted to explain is when you shift the data, it means there is a gap, yeah? And you can use the same techniques to populate those values, yeah? Last value brought next observation carried backwards, for instance. So the next observation would appear in January. Can we auto-populate the previous ones? And what would the impact? So, you know, you're just trying out with your time series data to learn one or two things out of it, yeah? So when you downsample, you won't have any nulls generated. And this is an example of the data. Now, instead of looking at it on a daily basis, unaona sasa namba imeenda juu, yeah? And we could try and plot the same. Let's try and plot. I think I have a plot here. Let me just check. Yeah. So you see, we've used the entire date, but we've downsampled it. So we're observing, we're not missing any observation because the initial sampling was we extract, we limit the observation. But in this case, we are using the entire observation, but an aggregated observation. So we will still see the pattern. We will still see the pattern as it changes. We won't lose any information. All right. So this, when you plot, you see, it now makes sense. Now, when you look at this, there is a trend and there is a season. So when you look at seasonality, year and year, there is an upward trend and then it goes down. And then it repeats again itself. There's an upward trend and then it goes down. And then there is an upward trend and then it goes down. So the difference between trend and seasonality is when you're trending an observation, you see it increasing and then decreasing or increasing, then decreasing. Seasonality is this pattern that you've observed here, it somehow repeats itself. So you'll see, like when you're looking at it year on year, it's easier. But what if you're looking at it month on month? Month on month now, it's like you're looking at one single year. Is there another, could you identify a seasonality that during the beginning of the year, inapanda, inashuka, alafu towards the end of the year, inapanda, inashuka, yeah? And is it the same for the other years? So that is the seasonality. Within this year, you could have 2 seasons. And then within this entire period, we have how many seasons? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it depends on how you're looking at the data and how you split your timing. I hope it makes sense. Monthly summaries. So when you do, this one was, I think this one was weekly. Yeah, you've aggregated it weekly. And then here you're aggregating it monthly. So you see, you're downsampling it further monthly, and this is even further downsampling. This is quarterly. So you see the same seasonality is observed. And you remember in the previous class, Grace said that there is a term, which term was that? I had asked a certain question and he contributed to say, she said it's used for smoothing data. Who can remember? I've just forgotten the question. Imekuja ikapotea. All right, I'm so sure I'll remember. So when you hear about smoothing data, it's like you're reducing that frequency. So look at this. Look at this. There is, yeah. You see, it's like now the trend is a bit softer. It's not as rugged as this one. As rugged as this one. And even this one was so rugged. You can see it's a line, it's a straight line. All right. Okay. All right. Let me move to the next one. I can see time is running out. Yes. I remember she asked about rolling window. Okay. Now, when you're talking about rolling window, is I had mentioned about shifting. Okay, I think I jumped the gun. When you're shifting the data, you select a certain period to either the X or the data itself, either the date or the data itself. But when it comes into rolling window, there is normally a period within which you want to make those observations. Yeah. So let's look at it this way. Record number 1. I want you guys to try and memorize. I'll give you 4 records. Let's put it at 6. I'll give you 6 observations, basically 6 records in an Excel sheet, meaning 6 rows. So record number 1, the value is 1, and the date is January 1st. Record number 2, the value is 2, and the date is January 2nd. Record number 3 is 3, and the date is January 3rd. Like that until record number 6 is 6, and the date is January 6th. So we have 6 observations. Now, this data we can plot from January 1st to January 6th, we can plot a trend graph. When you come to rolling window, what this means is, can we pick, or rather, can we aggregate or study this pattern by aggregating values based on a certain window? So for instance, instead of starting with January 1st, we add the value, if we choose a rolling window of 2, for instance, because we have 6 days, so it will be easier to explain. If we choose a rolling window of 2, we will add 1 being the value for January 1st, and 2 being the value for January 2nd. And then we make this the observation of the next day. And then we will have January 1st and January 2nd being blank. You get? So when we aggregate our data in that way, it means we have a rolling window of 2. So our starting point for our observation becomes the aggregation for January 1 and January 2, which is the value 3. Now, since we are rolling each of them, then the next observation will be for January 2 and January 3. It makes the next observation. So the next observation will be for, I think, 4th. And then for 5th, it will be January 3 plus January 4. I hope it's clear. So it's like your starting point, you aggregate, and then you maintain that aggregation as you move. So you want to see how does the statistics for your data set change over time. And the statistics that I'm talking about here is the median, the variance, maybe even the standard deviation of your data set. So if your variance and your mean or your standard deviation changes over time, it means it brings us to another term in time series, which explains which we know as stationarity. So if it changes over time, it means your time series is not stationary. Yeah, it is not stationary. But if it remains the same, if it remains the same over time, it means it is stationary. So that is one difference between a linear regression problem, which the assumption is it is stationary, because that data does not change. And when you look at how you solve a linear regression or multiple regression, any other regression problem, that data is normally stationary. Yeah. So you have data that you're calculating, and your interest is predicting a value based on your training data set. But time series, there are certain events that make this data change over time. So that is one difference between the regression and time series problem. Yeah. So I hope the concept of rolling window is clear. So as you roll, you can calculate the rolling mean. Enrico, this was a question where you want to check this. I think this is what you had asked earlier. So if you want to check, you want to change what you're using for aggregation, you can use mean or standard deviation. So in this case, you're looking at mean. So if rolling window 3, yeah. So you take this plus the third one, you get this. You get this plus the third one, you will get this. So this one becomes null. That is exactly what I was explaining. And then you can define, in this case, we did a summation, but you could actually provide a different parameter here, rolling mean or rolling standard deviation. So you're just taking the statistics as it changes over a period of time. So all these things, it's something that you explore during time series. So it's a lot of info that it gives you a lot of interesting analysis when you're doing a time series problem. Now, these null values, the things that I was discussing about earlier, you can fill them. Yeah, you can fill them. So backfill is you're taking the next value to populate the previous values. So this is exactly what's happening here. So you see this value populated with the previous one. And then I've also explained shifting. So the shifting is when you shift, it means you're shifting the data, as I'd explained. T-shift, you're shifting the time index. Yeah, it's the time index, meaning the x-axis is what you're shifting. Now, I've also explained trends, seasonality, and noise. Okay, I didn't use the word noise, but when the frequency is so high, it means it has a lot of noise in it. Yeah, and that noise, the fact that it's daily, you might not get important information. There might be need for you to aggregate it or say downsample it to reduce the noise. So you want to pick relevant information. So if you're not able to pick it on a daily, then you can actually reduce it via using downsampling method. Seasonality trend I've explained. Stationarity I've also explained them. So non-stationary. There are other techniques that Sikwa nimemaliza. I have not gotten a chance to finish. So I'm going to reserve this for, I was supposed to have done it before the next class. So I would want us to reserve this for next class. I'll complete this notebook. And then next class, we will see this together with EDA. So next class, I will complete the notebook to explain other time series terminologies before we go to EDA. And talking about EDA, there's a library called Altair. There's actually a set of libraries. Let me just share. Can you guys see my PowerPoint slide?
No.
All right, it's be forced to share that. How about now?
Yes.
Okay, so if you have your laptops on, you could run that, but if you don't, just in case, I'll share this so that you get time to do this, because in the next class, we'll be using Altair together with another library called Panel. And I was exploring the use of JupyterLab. I'll still struggle with it, but I find it very, very good. So I would recommend you guys to move from Jupyter Notebook to JupyterLab. It's for those guys who are not using. I'm assuming I'm assuming you guys are using Jupyter Lab. I think Deno is using Jupyter Lab. Oh yeah. Thanks, Deno. Deno sent the shortcuts for Jupyter Lab. Deno installed Jupyter Lab a while back. Sijui mbona nilikuwa namlenga. I should have moved the time you're telling me, Deno, but I find it's very, very good. Thanks. So Dennis has shared the link there that has shortcuts. So when you're installing Jupyter Lab, you might want to use those shortcuts and actually be comfortable with it. On that one, tuko pamoja, I'll also be doing a lot of learning on that as well. Okay. So let's go back to the notebook, and then we have our final discussion quickly, and then we wrap it. So where is that notebook?
But
yes, Edgar.
Also, for those who are using Anaconda Navigator, the Jupyter Lab is just there.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Right. I installed Anaconda, but I've never opened it. Like now, check out the tools. I start Jupyter Lab from command prompt.
Oh.
So inakaa ndio niko nyuma. So hey, all right. Ni mimi niko nyuma.
Peke yako. Nasikia Jupyter Lab na mimi hutumia Jupyter Notebook tu.
But at least I'm not alone. Eriko, I told you the other day. I told you that we are Zinjanthropus. Ukakataa. So my friend, just accept.
But it is
That's
still
an excuse.
working.
That's an excuse.
It's an excuse,
That's an excuse.
It's still working.
Still working.
Just wait. But I encourage you to try it out. Utadump notebook haraka upesi sana. Okay, so let's check out this. So I'll tell you, this is just a very, very basic visual. What caught my attention is this. I think I created, where is it? This dashboard. Okay. Yeah. Let me share my screen. I show you. Now, this is like the end goal. You see, this is running in a browser. And the server being used is called Bokeh. It's like a Bokeh application. But this one, you can actually manipulate it. So if you see those visual, if you want to change the date range, yeah, from a certain date to a certain date. So think about it this way: you're building a dashboard that end users would be able to check the demand or the demand of certain products over various date ranges. So ideally, my wish would be for us guys to think of how we would want to visualize this, and then use Altair together with Panel to come up with a dashboard. So what we will bundle together would be, on the demo day, because it's not like an app, we will demo the dashboard and explain the dashboard. So it will be a really, really cool dashboard, and then from there we can now think of how to make it an app by choosing a different problem. Because for this one we are using Twitter data, so we can't make it an app. It will be a dashboard. So it could be a dashboard that fetches real-time data from Twitter, pushed into a pipeline, and then the dashboard is for guys to see. Yeah, for guys to see. Yeah. So the direction that this takes is actually upon us, but ideally I found this kind of dashboard that can be hosted in the public. to showcase what we've done, it would really give each one of us a very, very a good advantage, each one of us, in terms of your skills and capabilities. And this is where it starts from. It starts from this notebook, this one. So it's very, very basic. What I've shown you guys. Let me project my notebook now. This one. Can you guys now see my notebook?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Yes.
So what I've shown you guys, it's on this, how many cells? Let me just quickly walk through. You import the, I'll share this for you guys to have an idea and even try and replicate it with the links to where you can find more information. You import the libraries, and then this library comes with an inbuilt data set. So as guys, I believe, Rico, you'll help us get our data, and then we work towards having data in this kind of format. This is just for stocks. So this has an inbuilt data. So we call it create a data frame and then check it. It's immediately pushed as a data frame. So there's a way using Altair, you can choose where you want to render your visual. So in this case, what I showed you previously, you can render it on an HTML page, or so that people can actually access it on HTML. So you do something on Jupyter Notebook and immediately publish it on HTML, and guys can actually see and make decisions. So if you can, together with Panel, when you do those two, you can come up with amazing dashboards that, Power BI is a resource for many, for the people with money. So if you can do that and you do it free of charge, your company will definitely recognize you, because maybe licenses for Power BI, they won't need to add. So any other person who wants to use it can use your dashboard displaying the same thing. So for those guys who are working, this is something that you might want to really take seriously and research. And when you research, usinyamaze, kuja utufunze pia sisi. Ile kitu nimefunza, unafunza, unaenda huko nje, una research, unakuja unatufunza. So you decide where you want to render your dashboard here. And then there's a function. This is a function that actually does the magic. So here you're specifying the title, you're specifying the subtitle, and then this is like what will appear in the drop-down list. So let me flip-flop between that and let me switch between that and this. So this is a drop-down. So if you wanted to check, so we are looking at products. We are looking at products. So if we come up with 5 products, then we could put all those products in a drop-down. So when you choose a product, it tells you this is a trend over the past couple of days, and this is the predicted value. And then next couple of days, this is the predicted value. And if you want to switch between specific periods, that is how you move the data. Yeah. So it simplifies decision making. Yeah. And something like this can grow to so many other stuff. Okay. All right. No problem, Edgar. No problem. The session is going to be recorded. Okay. You can leave. No worries. I'm just wrapping up. Now this one is now the ticket timer, and then you define the date range that you want to, the period within which your data set is working with, and then this is the panel that you embed now the ticker as well as the time range, and then this function is what draws the charts. Yeah, so you're loading the data set and then formatting to date time, meaning creating the date from string, converting it from string to date time index. And then defining the start and the end date. Mask is like now a marker where it will, based on, there's a way Altair does its rendering using masks. So you're defining the mask that you're going to use, basically the filter. Create Altair chart. This is all it takes for you to create a chart and give it a color. So we will learn the parameters. I'm still learning Altair. I found it very. Yeah, Edgar, what's on mute here? Mute.
Wow.
What's on mute, Edgar? Okay, so this is the code that draws the chart that you've seen. And then this is where you call it. Like now, you define the dashboard. And this is where now you, yes?
I think you're displaying the dashboard, Amma. We are not supposed to see the.
Oh, you're not seeing the notebook? Oh,
no.
Okay, all right. Well, and now?
Iko sawa sasa, thanks.
Iko sawa. Hey, na venye nimeenda sawa. So nilikuwa hapa, thanks for that. So this is the subtitle, the title. We could put this as the products. This is where you're now defining the ticker, like now the drop-down box. And then this one you're specifying the slider, which is the filter. This is the panel. So panel, you're initializing the ticker and as well as the slider. And the function that is going to do all this magic, this is the function. So this function, you give it the data frame as the source. You remember the source that was here, this one. And then you create a datetime index for the date column. You define a start and end date, give it a mask. This is the mask I was talking about, basically just a filter for the data frame. And then this is the code that does the plotting, yeah? And you return the chart, yes? So initializing and creating the dashboard, and then you display the dashboard. So when you display the dashboard, you can display it on a Jupyter notebook, render it on Jupyter, or you can render it on the page that I had shown you. So the rest of the code is just other things I was trying out. I have not finished. So when I complete everything, I will upload it. And I guess that marks the end of today's class. We've passed by 15 minutes. I wanted each person, if you could quickly just type on chat what kind of visual, just to spend like 5 minutes, just paste on chat, assume you're the either a call center manager or the manager handling operations. What kind of visualization you'd want to see? What kind of view you'd want to see? So what we come up with could form the basis within which we can learn Altair and display that dashboard and make noise about it. So guys, let's spend like 5 minutes and maswali no, hizo nini zianze kukuja kwa chat tafadhali. So I'll pause until the 5 minutes is over and then we can start. Okay, I guess that's enough time. I gave even more. So let's go through them. Okay. Rico, umeamua tu utume screenshot ama image ni ya nini? Daudi, you had asked a question. Does it have to involve the Twitter dataset? Yes, because we are thinking of what we are going to visualize. So I've received one from Faith. Actually, the only person I've received from is Faith. Doing it call. Let me call names. Devi, where would I type? Devi type yako. Eriko. Eriko.
Yes, I was waiting for you to clarify that question.
Oh, question ya nani? Question ya Devi.
Yeah.
Oh yes, yes. It needs to be about the Twitter dataset that we will pull, because that is the dashboard that we will eventually create. But if we get the data, Eriko, I think I'll work with you. So we get the data and start preparing before the class.
Ayub,
Yes.
I thought you said you're going to give us a chance on that.
On building it. Yes, yes, yes. By all means. Yes, yes, yes. Unajua nimesema Eriko juu Eriko ndio guru wa ku scrap data from inaitwaje pale hiyo scrap from Twitter.
So nampatia nini? Go ahead asishare knowledge ama?
Hapana. Ata scrap. Just scrap. I think we will be doing this on I haven't thought through. If we won't be able to do it in the course of the week, then we could make it, because hakuna haraka, we could make the next class exclusively or to learn what has happened.
Okay.
Yeah. Wait. Yeah. So Eriko lazima atashare knowledge yake. So aki manage to scrap say 100, aki scrap say 100,000 for over the past, I think even 100,000 ni kidogo. Anyway, Eriko will get a session. We could dedicate next class for this. So we go through the scrapping, and then we go through the NLP stuff, like now topic modeling and stuff. And then the objective of next Wednesday's class is to have a data frame that is ready for time series. So after next week, we continue. So knowledge lazima itasambazwa. Lazima. Iko sawa Faith?
Iko sawa Ayub. Ni venye tu nashindwa nasema nani anamconfuse. Ama ako zake.
Ako zake. Wachana na Eriko. Alikuwa anauliza nini ya Devi? Kuna swali fulani Devi ameuliza kwa chat.
Na nyinyi ndio mmenconfuse mkini mention kila time nikijaribu kutype. So niko zile za I'm answering, I'm thinking of answering and already najituma.
Unajituma. Sawa. Sawa. Take your time. Alafu tume. Okay. So who else? Nelly ni mwana yako. Sam. Mambo Sam, are we together? Bado na type? Sama kuna sisi? Ama ameenda saini time ya watu. It's beyond 8:30 is normally invasion of privacy. Watu wako na agenda tofauti.
Exactly.
So tunataka tumalize chap. Haya, Deno? Deno umetuma yako? Ama you're still typing? No, was it? No, it's not Deno. Soles? I just want to go through what I've received so far, faster. Soles?
I'm thinking.
All right, okay. So in case you just try by the time namaliza kusoma, paste. But in case utakuwa manage, then don't rush. You can always paste it on WhatsApp group. I'm on it directly, so we know. Okay, let me go through what I've received. The dashboard should have a quick check. Topic with highest complaints, pending and resolved complaints, and capacity against complaints. So capacity, I mean, I guess you mean workforce.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. All right. And then unresolved complaints would mean we will be checking tweets that does not have replies.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay. Sawa. And then the next one from Nelly. The dashboard should have topical problems to know what's the common complaint and the given geographical location with similar common problem. Okay, interesting. So basically the data should have geographical location. I'm not so sure if that is available. Erico will advise us when he's scrapping. And then it should be able to show resolved issues and resolved and why. That coincides with, yeah, okay. Also categorize matters of urgency in given issues, all right. So like prioritize issues. Nelly? You're talking about prioritization of the issues. Nelly?
Yes,
oh. Oh, okay, okay. Sorry? You're breaking up.
I was saying that some issues are more urgent than others.
Oh, okay, okay, okay. Some are more urgent than others. So we'll have some sort of priority. But now this would be based on our own intuition. Yeah, we are all customers of either Airtel or any telco company. So we would probably be able to get this. It would be very, very interesting. Ini kazi mnajipatia sawa sawa. I won't say no. It should show the common channels the clients reach out when submitting complaints. Now this one is we are scrapping data from Twitter, so the channel will just be one. I don't know what you meant. Did you mean several product categories, or what did you mean by channels?
It's the same. I didn't know you are using Twitter only, so
okay.
you can scrap that.
All right. Okay. And then the dashboard should show different products that customers look for. Customer service. All right. Okay. All right. And then there will be customer complaints, resolve complaints. Interesting. So those that have been resolved. Okay. That one is common across. Very interesting. All the other above and compliments. All the above mentioned and compliments. Sawa sawa. Sawa sawa deno. Alafu Daudi.
Hizo compliment ni gani? Anatu compliment ama ni compliment za watu?
I meant to say the resolve. Tunajua after you resolve issues, people just say it's resolved or something like that.
Okay. So the data that we will pull, we need to be able to pull everything, including replies from Airtel. We pull replies from Airtel. That's the only way we'll be able to know these have been resolved, these have not been resolved. Okay. Okay, fungueni tu roho, which is good. Kibarua. Acha nitaweka hizo zingine kwa WhatsApp. Sawa sawa. Karibu sana WhatsApp. We will continue with this discussion. If you feel that there is something that you need to contribute, please feel free and contribute it. I think we are back on track with me on leave and with you guys still energetic. I'm optimistic that we shall reach our destination. There's one thing that I want to make a proposal and a learning from what happened. I believe these classes should not be dependent on me. I believe these classes should actually go on even without my my presence, because they are recorded and it's more of a team spirit. So with NLP, that is what we are doing, and with the tomorrow's class, which is the image processing, that is exactly what one of them came out and offered to like facilitate. So even with this class, I would recommend that either we come up with a strategy that people could either facilitate on rotation, or we appoint someone. My recommendation would be facilitation or recommendation because of two reasons. One, the individual who will be facilitating will learn something and also build presentation skills, which will be very, very key when we are doing the demo and even selling whatever it is you're selling. And then the second one is everyone gets a chance to contribute. So as a facilitator, automatically you'll be forced to go and do the research everyone else is doing and be able to come and present. So I don't know what your thoughts are. I know it is late. People have started dropping off. Kisniper. I want this discussion to go on WhatsApp. Please share your ideas on those two things. Should we be on rotation? And if it's on rotation, how do we select the people to start? Can we start with randomly based on this list that I'm looking at on participation? Hapa hii participant ikuwe tu random. Mtu wa kwanza ikuwe Eriko, next akwe Daudi, next akwe Faith, next akwe Sling. We have how many classes left? I think ni 4 or 3. So we are many. So it will be 2, 2, 2, 2, 2. Eriko, Daudi, Faith, Sling, Soles, and Nelly. So it's you guys to decide. Let's have this discussion in WhatsApp. Having said that, do we have any questions, comments before we close? Eriko? We are good?
Yeah, I'm good. I'll be scrapping the data over the weekend.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. As soon as you get it, please share because I need to now think through on the NLP part of it. Faye?
No problem.
Cool.
Sasa cause ana scrap data. Si umwambie tu ni ana facilitate the next class.
Si ni yeye.
Discussion ishi hapo tu.
Ni yeye ataanza na hiyo list ya kesho. The next class ni yeye.
Naweza choose mtu wa kupresent na mimi.
Yeah, sawa. We choose. Feel free by the way. Bas, ndio.
No question asked.
Okay.
Unless utanite classes through. Kando. Nite classes through kando.
So hizo ni dome zenyu. Sisi tunajua ni Eric na Faith wanatu facilitate in the next class. Sawa. Okay. Sawa. Nelly? Nelly, we are good?
Yes.
We are good? We want to wrap up the class.
Okay.
Yeah, so I believe we tuko sawa.
Niko sawa.
Okay, poa. Deno?
Yeah, I'm good.
Perfect. Soles?
Yeah, I'm good.
Sawa. Then Daudi hata sasa anaweza fungua hiyo speaker yake. Daudi, hebu tusikie sauti yako. Are we good? Sawa Daudi.
Hadi na feel ni ka demons zinacheka.
Sawa David. You guys have a good evening. Until next time. Eriko, I'm looking forward to the data. Be safe and stay safe. See you guys.
Same to you guys.
Thank you. Bye.
Good night, people.
Good night.